Good afternoon. So I returned from the grocery trip. And so soon I will hold the video with about my military days, the Game of Thrones video. But before that, I'm just eating lunch now. Regular, sardines and pita and a bun. So I decided to very briefly mention something that I already mentioned it in the past, but kind of caught my eye. No, I'm not a clone. I was not resetted, even though part of the trip was, the grocery trip was adjacent to the Setai Hotel in Jaffa, and presumably it's kind of like an ancient mansion that is used by the dark forces of this world to replace people with clones. So this might hint that I actually has been replaced. I don't know how this mythology works. After so long, it still eludes me. Of course, it's so ridiculous. You don't really. Is it that difficult? To follow the person. Just follow the person. To see exactly where he was and what he's done. Why is it always such a question? When I get out of the apartment and get back, if anything happened to me, you can just follow me. I do not go to any. I mostly walk or just short taxi drive. You can just you can just follow me. It's not in the 19th century. Sherlock Holmes just paid a penny to a child in the street. Maybe today, it's less of customary to pay pennies to children to follow a person. Arguably, some still do it, but it was still very common in Victorian time and very simple. You don't need to be the CIA or the Mossad to do it. But presumably, even though they still paid these dirty pensions to all sorts of children to follow me, they still never know if the person was actually replaced or not. So they need to discuss the issue. So you went to the Setai? Didn't went to the Setai? So I've just seen a thumbnail that reminds me of something if you see a Capri, something like the word Capri on one of the juices or something like that. So I was reminded, with the story that I kind of I told you just a couple of weeks ago. Regarding the emperor, the only Roman emperor that actually decided to retire. I don't even remember his name. I could easily check it. It was around 200 AD. But you can check it yourself. He was famous because he was presumably the only one that did not die in office or was, kicked out or assassinated or died in war. It just, when he reached the age of 60, he just decided, thank you very much. It's been fun. And he was considered very successful. People loved him, and also historians today actually evaluate him as a successful emperor. But he decided, okay, I've had enough. Bye. And famously, after that, the empire was, if I remember correctly, divided between 4 people, but it wasn't successful. So people went to his place in the island of Capri. If I remember correctly, it was the island of Capri where he had a retired mansion. So they wanted him to get back to office because he was still not that old and healthy. There was nothing wrong with him. So they thought, why maybe stop doing whatever you do and just get your ass back to the chair, and continue to work, because such things have happened in Rome. They didn't, the position of the emperor in Rome, in the Roman Empire. Yes, many of them actually thought of themselves as deities or attributed themselves, to deities. Many attributed themselves to actually to Venus, actually to the goddess Venus. But people, I mean, they were not really considered deities by the people, and I mean, many times people just replaced them. I mean, it was not like, I mean, it wasn't like Pharaoh, something like even close to that. I mean, it was always kind of like, if people didn't like you and you weren't successful, I mean, soon, assassination attempts or just, coups, and you were out. So they thought, okay, so let's, get him back. like a convoy from Rome. So yeah, they found him like tending to his cabbage, gan kruvim, cabbage garden, raising the cabbages, and told them, look how beautiful they are growing. I mean, can you watch them grow? It's a funny story because it's kind of like, there is something like Zen Buddhist about it, and not really Roman, but that's the story. And of course, he didn't get back to Rome, and that's it. I actually think that I've read the story in a book that, like in hindsight, during my life I was always super skeptical and rational, always, and everybody that knew me to be such a person. Certainly not a person that always, seeks signs and, symbols or, divinations and attributed things to it. It only happened, it started to happen to me, I only started to become this person after the journey started during 2019, like the discovery journey. Part of the journey is me getting close to God, and yes, divination is part of the thing, and I speak about it quite a bit, and I've written about it quite a bit. So you retrospectively, retroactively, you place all sorts of meaning to all sorts of things that, while they happen, seem completely random to you. Like, how did I become aware of this story? Because it's mentioned in the book, the Scroll of Megillat Saint Michaela, the Saint Michaela scroll. That's the name of the book. And how I actually became to know this book because when I traveled Laos maybe 10 years ago, like I went, like, there is a place, like, on the Mekong, like the Four Island River or something like that. Like, there are many small, like 4,000 islands, something like that. Like, many small islands. So I went to one of these islands and just walked, the island, and later a friend of mine, Jonathan Brown, actually also joined me. But I was alone at the time. Just walked the island, and at some point, I was kind of like, I was tired, so I just sat like in a local, like, restaurant, I would say. But it's Laos, so everything is very modest, very, at least at the time. Maybe they are changing. But at least at the time, 10 years ago, it was still, one of the more modest places, even compared to Southeast Asia. Laos was very, I would say, not developed. And it wasn't it was, I think September or October, so there were almost no tourists because at the time the Mekong is brown, like, it's not like the nice time to watch the Mekong actually. So there aren't many tourists, and also it's crazy to hike the jungle, like, surrounding the Mekong. But I've done it because I'm stupid and crazy. But I've done it. I was kind of like, it actually wasn't like as bad as it might sound, because when I actually think about it and describe it, it sounds like something from a horror movie, and it was like. But when you go through it, you just, what can you do? Just you just adapt to the situation. Anyway, I was like covered with leeches, not one or two, head to toe leeches of all, like, sizes. like covered with leeches. Which is actually predictable, I mean, during the time, so people don't do it, but I know, I like hikes, so why not? And I mean, you can avoid it. I mean, no matter if you wear a lot of clothes or like no clothes at all, anyway, they will get you, or they will be all like, they will cover you. I remember, like, I was so expert, like, in removing leeches for myself that I actually categorized the leeches. There are like 5 categories of leeches. Like, I mean, extra small, small, medium, large, and extra large. And you know what's the worst type? By far, the worst type is medium. Maybe it's not intuitive, but that's the way it is. Because mediums are the ones, it's by far the most difficult to remove from your body. Like, you cannot remove it from your body. Like, the only way to do it is like you hit your body with a stone. You actually need to take a stone and to hit your body. Only that way they are removed. They latch into you, like, and you can't. The big ones are the most disgusting, but I mean, you can just, I mean, the extra large, you can just, I mean, wipe it, you know, very easily, just, I mean, like that. And the small and the extra small are also, I mean, pretty easy to remove. There is actually another type, like the very extra small, which you can barely actually see it, actually. So maybe you will miss it. Like, I remember that once I got out of there, like, and I was on a boat, like a local, like a woman, just, I mean, showed me that I actually still have like a very extra small one that I missed, so I removed it. Yeah, I mean, there is much blood, like, yeah. When you remove it, like, I mean, yeah, blood is like gushing all over you. But presumably it's not dangerous because they don't carry diseases, and it's just, I mean, some even say it's healthy, you know, arguably. So yeah, that was stupid. I mean, it was actually more disgusting than you probably imagined, but subjectively it wasn't that bad. I mean, like, not 1 or 2 or 5 or 10. I mean, covered with leeches. So there aren't many tourists during the time. So it was empty, like the local joint, you know. So I sat there, ordered something. And so I've seen that there is like a bookshelf with all sorts of books in all sorts of languages, and there was one book in Hebrew, and this was that, like the Saint Michael Scroll. So I bought it from the person, and I read the book. It's mostly describes things like you know, like it's kind of like an autobiography to some extent of like a doctor in the, I think, Scandinavian doctor from, like, but he worked in Paris, I think, also to places like in Europe in the first decades of the 20th century. Interesting book. So he also relates the story of the retired emperor, the only one that actually retired. I should mention now something that I don't know if you remember, because and I don't even remember if I uploaded. I don't remember if I ever recorded it. Just another anecdote from my life. Like, you know, I have like a history, an interesting history with retired emperors. Because, you know, there is another example, very known example, but from our time, of a kind of an emperor that was retired in a very unusual way. Do you know what's the person? Who is the person? So this is Benedictus, of course, the Pope, the former Pope, that retired. I mean, and this was a little shocking because people did not know that it's actually a thing, like that they actually can do it. I mean, people saw that it's not something that you can do. I mean, I mean, it's not allowed by nobody. But I mean, he just said, I mean, bye. I mean, bye. So I mean, what can you do? But maybe it actually happened before, but maybe 1,000 years ago. I mean, not in recent memory, not even like in not recent memory. So he just retired. It happened maybe 8 years ago? No, more than 10 years ago? 11 years ago. I don't remember when it happened. Of course, it's easy to check it. But I remembered what happened like 1 day or 2 days, 1 day before his retirement, or maybe 2 days or 1 day. I don't remember if it was 1 day before, something that happened like maybe 1 day or 2 days before his retirement. I remember it very well. I think just the day before his retirement it happened. I remember the day very well. Before he announced his retirement to the public, Benedictus. So I was sitting in El Kharizi 2 El Kharizi Street in Jerusalem. It's an apartment that I lived in like for 3 years, but at the time I didn't live here. I was also, but I was sitting there. I mean, so the people that lived there were, I mean, you know, the person that actually was my flatmate when I lived there, and his maybe wife or girlfriend, probably already wife. They were not. I mean, they were friends, like, you know, romantically involved very shortly before they married, like maybe months. So probably, I mean, they were already married, I guess, and maybe other, you know, people, you know, friends from the Jerusalem milieu. So we just sat there, Amalia, Yonatan, me, maybe also Inbal, my wife, probably. So we sat, like, you know, in the living room, and, you know, spoke like we've done many times, you know, before. And I don't know why, but I mean, at some point I felt like, I mean, it's time for me to speak about an unusual subject. I decided it's time to me to speak about the Catholic Church. A very unusual subject. I mean, at the time I wasn't like, I didn't consider myself Christian like now, and I mean, but I don't know why. Kind of like, I mean, like it came to me that, I mean, you know, like from above, that, I mean, I must speak about the Catholic Church. So I addressed, like, you know, the audience, you know, Yonatan, Amalia, Inbal, maybe other people, and I told them, you should know that, I mean, something very important about, something interesting about the Catholic Church, about the popes. There were so many popes, and I mean, and you know, famously they choose their names, and some names, I mean, repeating all the time. For example, Benedictus, it was like number 16, like, you know, like 16 people called themselves Benedictus, and there was, you know, there was like many other, you know, like, you know, John, all sorts of names that repeating all the times. And I told them, but I mean, you need to, I mean, there's something interesting here, because some names repeating again and again, like Benedictus 16 times or 12 times, 10 times, and there were so many popes, but never in the history of the church, not even one pope decided to call himself Francis. And this is both amusing, but also, I mean, it might signify something of essence, because it's amusing because he was a very important saint, Francis of Assisi, very important, and also there is a very important order like that are named after him that exists to this day, and that had tremendous like impact on history. And I mean, just to say, he was a famous saint. I mean, because they have many saints, but I mean, he's not like, you know, kind of like, you know, like a Chapash saint. You know, it was like, you know, like highly venerated saint, very important and famous saint, with much things that are attributed to him. But no one ever chose to be called Francis. How is it possible? So I told them, like, I had a vote on the matter, like, you know, Dvar Torah, Chidesh, Ba'agada. So I told them, this signifies something. It's not just, I mean, a random thing, that 16 people decided to call themselves Benedictus, but not even one decided to call himself Francis. And it was so important, Francis of Assisi. But this actually signifies something, because it was kind of like a Lutheran moment that I had, like, you know, like Martin Luther moment that I had. I thought this signifies something. It's not just for it's not a random thing. because in a way this should be attributed to, I mean, like to their advantage. I mean, it's kind of like a good thing that can be attributed to the Catholic Church and to the popes. Why? Because presumably they knew that they cannot be named after Francis because none of them actually in any way was like, I mean, devoted to his way, because he was famous for, I mean, for being modest and to choose poverty like as an ideal, even though he wasn't like he didn't come from like low background, and like he had like money, and he was very educated, actually extremely educated. He was extremely educated. Like he was not like a poor monk like from nowhere. Actually, he was very. He was actually very like high background and tremendously educated background. But he chose by his like own volition that like to put like his life devoted to one of the ideals like the ideal of like like modesty and also even poverty. And that was, I mean, a major, I mean, part of his legacy. And they all knew that while all the popes presumably knew that while this is, of course, part of Christian tradition, it's not something alien to Christianity in general. They knew that as the Bishop of Rome, I mean, they cannot, I mean, pretend to follow this way because they never had. I mean, famously, they were all rich and not modest at all. It was never part of their, of their ideal of the popes, never. So they did not allow themselves to be named after him, and this is actually something good to say about them, because presumably, I mean, it says that, I mean, they knew that, I mean, that I mean, they can't. I mean, that it's not like, I mean, that it will be presumptuous and vain if they will be named after this man that, while he's very important in the history of the church and a very important saint, and his way is certainly formally, traditionally part of the Christian way, they themselves cannot, I mean, wear this crown, the crown of, modesty or poverty, because they were never, I mean, none of them was ever like that. That was my vote. That was like my Chidush Dvar Torah. I just remember it just like now, because a day after that, Benedictus was decided that he announced his retirement, and several days after that, a new pope was chosen. And do you know what's his name, or what the name that he have chosen to himself? So that's a funny story. Okay, so in a bit, I'll finish my my lunch, and I'll discuss the Game of Thrones episode of my life.